This episode of the Brewtallyspeaking podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. Brewtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BREW and get 10% off your total order. Now on to the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brewtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is technically me, but this is actually a collaboration episode with Matt from Cryptopsy / the host of the Vox and Hops podcast. They are really, essentially, we are the same show. I would say Matt is definitely a more knowledgeable person when it comes to beer. As you'll hear me say, I think he knows more of, like, I'm into mosaic hops, I'm into these kind of things. He's able to pick apart a lot more of his beers from a more clinical standpoint, whereas I'm more of a, yeah, this tastes good, this is what I'm able to pick out of it for this kind of beer, you know, da-da-da-da-da. So both have a love of craft beer, craft cocktails, craft things, as well as metal, and doing a podcast kind of based around that. So it seemed inevitable that we would get together eventually. Matt definitely steers a lot of this and just kind of lets me go. And I get a couple of questions in as well for Matt. But, you know, the thing that I love about this idea that he does when he has other podcasters on, where we basically both drop the episode at the same time, is sort of like I was saying in the beginning, where, you know, a lot of people talk about this theoretical competition that we're all in with each other for downloads and whatever. And I love Matt's idea of, like, well, let's both put it out on our platforms, and maybe the people who don't know about your show will learn about yours because they listen to mine, or because they listen to you will now know about mine. And I really love that. I just love that inclusivity, you know, in the collaborative process, and just kind of doing something because you believe in what each other are doing. And speaking of believing in what each other are doing, I believe that Matt is probably the most adventurous motherfucker I know, because he just, it's been out for a little bit now, but he did a brutal North American collaboration series between 24 breweries and 24 bands, tentatively from the area that the breweries are in. Thankfully, I was next to one of the breweries. It was about 5 minutes from my house, called Speciation Artisan Ales, and they did a whiskey barrel-aged spontaneous amber sour with a lemon zest, and it basically was paired with Battlecross, who are from the Detroit area. So Haran and Donnie came down and drank some beers, and the other cool thing about Speciation is once a week they host a metal vinyl night, which is pretty fucking cool. So at different points of the night while drinking this beer, there was, I think, some Acacia Strain. I think I saw, God, what else did I say? I think I saw some Gatecreeper, some other bands and so forth. And it's just playing, and people are drinking, having a good time, talking. And it was one of those in a very small microcosm of what I think is why all of us love metal and hardcore and all that is just the sense of community and to see so many different facets of a community basically coming together was really cool. And I gotta say hats off to Matt for pulling this off. That is actually my beer of this episode. I have it currently in the can. Now, the thing about this beer that was interesting to me is when I read what it was, I really wondered, is the barrel age going to be the dominant flavor or is it going to be more of the sour? Because if you do any drinking and you have tried any of those, you know that those are two very overwhelmingly strong presences in beer. And so having not seen a barrel-aged sour before personally, I was really intrigued to see what this is going to be like. And the thing is I don't really personally get a whole lot of the barrel-aged flavor. I think in what I do, it's kind of taking the sourness, a little bit of that bitterness away, and it's just kind of trying to like really smooth everything out. So you're just kind of left with a really nice like sour, lemony, citrus beer, and it's really it's surprisingly pretty light. I mean, most barrel aged things kind of come in at a little bit higher ABV, and this is only a 7.5, so it's super drinkable. If you go on to Untappd, if you're on there, or just Google this beer, it's called Rise to Sour. You'll see that it kind of is a nice reddish, pour. It looks, and some glasses it definitely does look a little thicker, like it would be more of like an IPA. But it's a pretty drinkable beer. I'm really excited to have supported this project in a multitude of different ways. I have one more can that I think I'm going to send out to somebody in a beer trade. And just major props to Matt for having me on the show, for doing this crazy beer collaboration that I'm still in awe of how he got it off the ground, and all with very smoothly by all accounts. And without further ado, let's get into Matt's conversation with me. And I'll talk to you on the other side of it if you're not bored with my voice by that point.
Today I'm with John Beatty from the Brewtallyspeaking podcast. This is an epic crossover episode. I am Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy, host of the Vox and Hops metal podcast. John, introduce yourself, even though I just did that, and let's get this episode rolling.
I'm John. I'm the host of the Brewtallyspeaking podcast, and it's pretty much identical to this show. This is the mirror match that everyone's been clamoring for before you get to Goro, I believe, is who you fight after the mirror match.
It's crazy that you are approaching 300 episodes. I'm about 30 out, and it's taken us this long to get together. And it took another podcaster to introduce us, which I thought was amazing. So shout out to Dewey from the Pure Pleasure podcast for hooking us up together.
Absolutely. Dewey is a great friend to have. He the thing that I love, and something I've talked about on my podcast, on other podcasts when I've done them, is that I think there's this weird belief that we're all in competition with each other. And the thing is it's like if you do well or Dewey does well, or, and collectively we all help each other, all that's going to do is just kind of, as Josta likes to say, the Jostaism of a high tide raises all ships. I totally think that that's a very accurate statement. And to me, I don't understand why people get shitty about competition. Like, to me, there were some podcasters that are now friends that I aspire to want to be, and I use them as my barometer. You talked actually in your episode with Dewey that, Jabberjaw initially was your benchmark of where you wanted to get the show to be. Very much the same. Jabberjaw was one of those to me where I was like, fuck, like, this is kind of the creme de la creme of music-based podcasts, and I want to be a part of it. And so, if I'm looking up to these people and using them as friendly competition, that's kind of how I take it, me personally. I don't think that there's any need to, as Dewey joked, I think on my show when I talked to him about that, he's like, it's not like we're making millions and millions of dollars, so why the fuck are we fighting? So,
growing up in the music scene, I got over that very quickly. You're friends with bands. We're all unsigned here in Montreal. We all grew up playing the same gigs. And then there was always that one band that got the gig opening for the big band coming through town. And then we would get that little pang of jealousy. But, with maturity and over the years, it's just, it's pride, because it is that. And I was totally going to quote Josta before you beat me to it. But it's true.
I don't think you can do this podcast at this point and not quote Josta, at least in some capacity. You want to get a boner in a jiffy? Chew it and do it.
The more people that listen to podcasts makes us happy. So let's just all spread the love, spread the podcast love, and let's work together to make metal and craft beer more well-known and more recognized and more appreciated as a culture.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny, and something I was going to kind of bring up to you in your journey through doing the podcast is, how have you found the craft beer world and kind of the metal world to be? Because when I started it, a lot of people were like, yeah, like metal people like drinking, but it's not, the perception is we don't have as refined a palate as maybe some would assume. And, really since kind of the rebrand of the show, that's kind of been something I've wanted to kind of really kind of bring to the forefront, not just with craft beer, but even craft cocktails. I actually just bought some loose leaf tea the other day that I'm really excited to get into and kind of start bringing that into the show as well. But I mean, we have craft water now. Like,
I know.
Like, it's weird. Like, I'm like, man, there's craft is like, it's not just macaroni and cheese anymore. It has expanded so far beyond that I'm just excited. And I think, with some of these festivals, even like Louder Than Life, kind of marrying rock, metal, mainstream rock, even bringing in some kind of underground hip hop, like having Action Bronson, Jelly Roll and stuff like that on, but then having, I think they had 50 different whiskey brands there.
Nice.
And so it's one of those you're kind of starting to see, even on a bigger scale, people kind of really starting to kind of introduce these different platforms and mediums together that I think between you and I, and probably our listenership, has long known goes together very well.
Mm-hmm. It's the finer things, the love of the finer things. And the more that people appreciate these finer, high quality things, the more money they'll be able to invest and be able to sponsor future events. So it won't just be a huge beer company coming in and sponsoring a music festival. It might just be like a conglomeration of craft ones that can actually pool together their advertisings to get a sick beer garden, instead of just having those shitty tents with two options and the macro craft that they're trying to peddle onto us, which sometimes is good, but most of the time is not. On that note, I'm very thirsty because it's hot as hell here in Montreal.
Not much different in Michigan, so...
Vox and Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends, talking about their life, music, and craft beer. Brutally Speaking is all about talking about life, metal, and craft beer. What beer are you enjoying on your side tonight that we will be sharing virtually?
All right, so I have it is a company here local to Grand Rapids called City Built Brewing. You're going to hear probably a story about this particular brewery in a little bit. This is called the Rolly on My Wrist. The cool thing about this brewery is they do a lot of kind of rap themed kind of beers. So the Rolly on My Wrist is a pastry stout. It's 150 pounds of Sweet K's famous fresh baked and frosted cinnamon rolls, Ugandan vanilla, brown sugar, and it's a collaboration with Ascension Brewing, and it comes in at a nice 10%. So it doesn't drink like a 10%. It drinks more kind of like a darker, just more like a dark beer. It's actually very light for as thick as it is, and as you can kind of see in the pour, it is very, very dark looking and very thick, but it is very sweet. The joke you made earlier was that it sounds like diabetes in a glass. It is one of my favorite random beers that I found recently. City Built does a really phenomenal job, which is no small order considering we have founders, just across the town. And they're obviously one of the bigger craft breweries here in not only the state, but I would say almost globally now. I think they've been getting out internationally as well.
On my side, I'm drinking something very interesting. It's this brand new Collab brew. It is a blend, so it's very interesting. À la Fût are Quebec's barrel kings. They're one of the first ones that started aging brews in barrels, mostly wild fermentation. really interesting. So what they did this year and last year, they do like series where each month they release a collab with a different brewery. Last year was with their Rouge de Mekinac, which is a red Flanders ale. This year they went for something a little bit more wild, a little bit more creative. They took their Cuvée Western, which is basically the closest thing that we can get to a lambic here in Quebec. It's won a bunch of sour and wild beer goes beer awards, and it's tart and delicious, and they have blended it with super hype New England IPA breweries. So this specific one is with Brewski, which I love to death. They do Mad Haze, and they do killer fruited sours such as Brutal Juice, which came out earlier with a Vox and Hops collab right there. So this is their propaganda and blend of Cuvée Western. This is 7.4% ABV. Very excited to try this, and I'm super stoked that I got my hands on one because it's very hype and very cool. I'm going to crack this, pour this open, and I want you to tell me all about your very first beer, John. Have you ever?
It's my first beer, I think, is like everybody actually, was Bud Light, because it didn't taste like anything. You know, the joke always is what's the closest you can get to fucking in water? It's like drinking Bud Light or something to that effect. I forget the full joke.
Something about a canoe or something, no?
Yeah. And I would just drink it because it was cheap. It didn't taste bad. Didn't really have any flavor. And I was always a Jack Daniels person, like straight away. Didn't know that I would like Jack Daniels. It was just one of those, like everyone I knew, like all of the metal people I loved, loved Jack Daniels. Motley Crue was Jack Daniels drinkers. So I was like, I guess I'm a whiskey drinker, and just always have stuck by Jack Daniels initially. But that was the first beer, was Bud Light. I would say the first, what I'll call a real beer that I really started to enjoy was actually Founders. And it was their breakfast stout. And I found that at the time, I was really predisposed to just liking stouts and porters. That was all I wanted. Get out of here with IPAs, anything light, didn't care. Over the last, I'd say 10 years, I've really kind of refined my palate. And thanks to Mark from Nothing More, he's a big fruited sour Goza fan, and he has gotten me to get into some of those from like Martin Brewing House down there in San Antonio. And I actually now will start looking at sours and just kind of going, okay, like, I think that's going to be good. I hope it's going to be good. He gave me a pickle sour beer that was fucking disgusting recently. And then he gave me a spicied one when we were out in San Antonio a couple of months ago that gave me like instant heartburn. And I was like, it tastes gross and it gave me heartburn. It's a double no for me. But I think that's the fun thing that I've kind of learned now, and just having a palate that enjoys everything, even kind of expanding into liquor as well, is just seeing what different places can do, and really traveling a lot more between my wife and I over the last decade, and kind of getting to experience and taste local flavor literally, and just kind of seeing what places do. I haven't gone to Canada. I think something you had said in a previous episode was that you guys have a limit as to how high up your ABV can go.
Yeah, here in Quebec, it's 12%. So if
that's still pretty good.
If you see a stout with 11.9 on it, you know that it's higher than 12%. that's
the legality of it.
The running gag in the breweries. Cheers to you before I taste this.
I'm excited to hear how that tastes.
It smells wild and amazing, but fruity at the same time. It's super fucked up.
Is it kind of thick? Has it got like legs on it?
It's got a nice body to it, but still not everything. See, it's juicy, but still got that sour tang of the Western. Sorry, my brain's not working. La Cuvée Western. Very interesting. Crazy crushable, even though it's got that 7.4% ABV. Killer. Wild and weird, but juicy at the same time. And it's cool, because LFU are just teaming up with the most hype breweries when themselves are not necessarily any longer a hype brewery. So it's a cool way to keep themselves involved in the craft beer scene here in Quebec, which I think is awesome.
So is it almost akin to, or I should say, is their model sort of akin to like what Untitled Art is doing or has been doing?
Oh, see, I'm unaware of that brewery.
Okay, so actually, hold on a second. Let me go grab a can.
Love it. He's got up. He's walking over. He's got a fridge in the room. He is an expert beer podcast drinker. I have beer hidden next to my bed.
See, I
live in a 4.5.
I have a craft beer problem where I buy a lot of it and then I don't drink it very quickly. So I had to buy a whole nother fridge just for my beers.
I just narrated you. I narrated you getting up to go get it.
So Untitled Art, as far as I understand it, is basically, so this is one, where's my camera? There it is. And let it get in focus. So
Oh, yeah.
Untitled Art basically seemingly does all kinds of different beers. But as far as I understand, they work with someone to basically distribute it, I believe. So it's almost like it's canned by Untitled Art, but it's made by somebody else, I think. I think that's how it was explained to me. Because there's no fucking way that they can make as much beer as they do and get it out if they were straight up just a singular like brewery somewhere like in Wisconsin or whatever. Like the amount of different beers that they put out at any given time is just too vast and too different that I there's just no way. So I think that's why that works.
For this specific one, à la fût, they do everything in-house. This is the second version, second round, second taking of this collab project. The second month, that makes more sense. It's the second month of this collab project. And the first one, they actually got barrels and they brought them in from Noctum and did the blend there. This time around, Brewski is such a hype brewery that they live week to week. They have a system where they brew, and then 3 weeks later that beer is sold, and then like on a Thursday, and then Saturday it's gone, and then they live week to week, just constantly creating. Must be so stressful, but they.
I was gonna say that sounds stressful,
and they're killing it, just so damn good. So they couldn't really bring beer to them, so they went over there and they brewed it there. Was the plan. I don't know if it panned out because of the pandemic, and the rules that we have up here are very strict. So I don't believe that had to happen, but they were there for the blending from what I've understood. So super cool. Still I think it's very creative, very, very creative way to tap into the hype of the Quebec market while remaining true to yourself, a wild lambic style brew, making it hype. It doesn't really happen that often here.
What is typically your go-to for like when you're going to a store and you're going to buy beer or whatever? What is your process of selecting a beer?
Well, when I go buy beer, I go to La Canette, which is my favorite local craft beer store. I'll give them a little plug. I love them to death. I have my 4-pack of death there every week, where I select 4 beers, and if you buy them, you get 5% off. I love them to death. Their owner, Kevin, is a great human. It's so close to my house. It's just really a happenstance that the one that's so close to my house ended up becoming my favorite place. But it's because it's ran by a dude that he curates it the way that I would curate my playlists and stuff.
Oh, okay.
It's not an overstocking. It's a small place. Everything goes into a fridge. Everything is cold. Everything is taken care of. And he doesn't just buy everything. He only buys the stuff that he loves. So when I walk into a craft beer store, such as La Canette, I go immediately for Crispies. I want like a nice lager. And then my attention is immediately drawn to the haze. I want to see what fresh haze he has, which I normally know because he's told me. Because we talk a lot. And I pick up whatever's cool from that week, or I've told him to put aside for me. And then I'll wrap up typically with a sour, with a big heavy stout, normally like a bourbon barrel-aged coffee stout. That's really my nightcap, nail in the coffin brew. But if it's like a nice long day and I'm going to go for a few hours, I'll definitely sneak in some sours there as well.
Interesting. I'm
all over the board.
Well, no, and I think that's the funny thing is like, is in listening to your show, you're what I would call like kind of the beer drinker. Like you are aware, you're probably of the capacity to where if you read the ingredients and you're like, Chinook hops, I'm not really like, haven't really enjoyed anything that's got that. I'm more of a Simcoe kind of guy or whatever. Like to me, and this gets me in trouble because I won't look at anything other than what the like flavor profile is supposed to be. So if I see a beer and I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, like it's got, coconut, like a pineapple flavor. I'm not really even looking at anything else. I'm like, coconut and pineapple. Huh. All right. That could be really cool. And so like there are things like that where I just read what the thing is. I don't pay attention to the APV. I don't pay attention to if it's a stout porter or whatever. I'm just kind of reading like what sounds delicious. And then same with like, with this, I just see double chocolate fudge brownie stout. And it's like, okay, I know it's a stout, but it's like double chocolate. All right. That any double chocolate, anything I've had in a beer usually is really good. The brownie aspect you may not get, but that's kind of lending more off of, the chocolate flavor. But it's again, kind of like the can. If a can looks cool, I'll go grab it. And I'm more of just kind of a like, all right, does this sound good? And that's definitely fucked me. Like when I went to like one of the last days when I was in San Antonio, we went to this cool like tap place and you could buy cans too. And I did that. I just looked at everything and I was like, oh, that sounds good. That sounds good. That sounds good. And the lady was like, I was like, can I make a flight? And she goes, we don't really do flights, but I can give you 8-ounce pours of everything. And in my head, that didn't sound like a lot. Until I literally got like 5 of these filled basically. And I was like, shit. And coincidentally, everything I grabbed was a stout or a porter and I think the lowest one I had was like a 13%. And I was like, fuck. And I was just like, I should start paying attention to the other things that probably would allow me to not make those mistakes, where now my day is kind of shot because I'm half in the bag or more by the time I'm done drinking these beers and I'm full. So now I've ruined dinner for my wife and I.
It's all about focused and powering through and just getting to the next place.
Yeah.
But no, I'm very in tune with what's coming out here locally. It's different if I'm traveling, obviously, but then I'll go for the local expert and see what's hype, what's cool. What it makes people excited here. That's definitely what's going on. So I know what beers are coming out here in Quebec. I know what beers I want to taste, and I know what beers I have to taste. So I hunt them down and I get them. But I know which breweries, and I have breweries that I really enjoy. I know which brewers are making these beers. I know who I trust, and I know who I want to invest in for sure.
What's one of the most adventurous beers you've come across?
Oh. The most recent one of my most recent collabs, the Brutal Juice that I mentioned earlier with Brewski, it shouldn't have worked. It's a beer that shouldn't have worked, but Derek, their head brewer, is just such a mastermind. The beer came to life because they make brew juices. It's their fruited sours. I drink them as a hangover cure, typically. And they're fruity. They got the fruit puree. You got the little hair of the dog aspect. But I also really like coffee. So in the morning, I'll definitely have a coffee with my brew juice. Hence the creation of Brutal Juice.
Gotcha.
So of course, I had to say Brutal Juice because everything is brutal with me, just like you.
Actually, I get called out on that quite a bit, actually, that I'm not as brutal as apparently I claim to be.
It was an easy one. It was I'm not certain, but it might actually have been Kevin's idea. From La Canette. I think it was from a lot of my collab ideas I bounce off his head because he really knows what's going on in the scene. So I pitched this idea to the Brewski's team, and they were like, oh, let's do it like a breakfast. Let's do like oatmeal, and we'll put maple syrup, and we'll make it as dark as we can. And then they took it from there. So, like a fruited sour with deep, dark red, black berries, with coffee, with maple syrup. It shouldn't work, but it totally did. And it was killer. Just so damn good. I sincerely hope they bring it back.
There was I can't remember where the brewer ended up, but there was a small like local brewery here, and they used to do a double bubble IPA, and they would put like I might have the number wrong, but I swear they said like they put 50 pounds of double bubble, like just unwrap it, throw it in, and that's the beer.
They put it in the mash or in the actual. I must have the mash. I don't know. I can't imagine where that would go.
I'm trying to remember because obviously I feel like the sugars would drastically impact
the ABV.
Yeah, so I feel like they would have put it in first to kind of help control that. But I'm thinking back to like the few times I've actually brewed beer. I'm trying to think of like at what point do you try to get as much of the sugar to interact with the yeast? And I feel like it's in the very beginning. So I feel like that would be something they would do right away in that process, is brew it with everything right away. But yeah, that was one of the more adventurous beers I've ever had. I found 2 beers going to a random like beer festival outdoor thing a couple of summers ago. One was a Snickerdoodle beer that tasted exactly like a Snickerdoodle cookie.
Amazing.
I was like, there's no fucking way this is going to taste like a Snickerdoodle. And sure as shit, you drink it and you're just like, it's light. It's got the good cinnamon flavor, but it has like that sweet cookie taste to it. And be damned if it didn't taste like a Snickerdoodle. But the other one that like made me go to the brewery like an hour away the very next day was this Oatmeal Cream Pie Ale out of Pigeon Hill, which is in Muskegon. And they put, I think they said 100 pounds of marshmallow fluff into it. Jesus. To give it the, if you can tell, I like sweet beers.
Yeah.
I just realized like, man, everyone listening to this down the road is probably gonna be like, Jesus Christ, you probably have like high blood pressure and all this other shit from all these sweet beers you drink.
You should do an insulin fund.
make that a beer. Put that in my beer.
Your Patreon could be help pay for my insulin.
I also enjoy mixing beer and liquor. And ciders and so forth. I think a classic one is just taking like a good dry cider and putting like a shot of Goldschlager or something in there, so you get a nice like apple cinnamon flavor. Typically, I'll do like a nice vanilla vodka in like a good chocolate or coffee stout, so you kind of get like that coffee and cream kind of flavor going on.
Very cool.
Oh yeah, alcoholic through and through.
That's something that I'm messing around with. I love creating collabs, and I think I've seen it happen elsewhere. You might have seen it as well. I love to do like a collab where it's two beers and the beers stand up on their own, but if you mix them together, they become something else.
So I've done that with cherry wheat and Guinness. It basically is kind of a different take on like a dark and stormy. That's a liquor. A black and tan kind of, but in a different capacity. But really, it was just a very cheap way for me to try to make a beer that they have out here at Founders called the Big Luscious, and it's like a chocolate cherry kind of thing. So it was just a like hobo way of me making that beer. But yeah, mixing beers is great. I'm kind of a garbage person. I'll mix whatever and try it at least once just to see if it tastes good. And sometimes like you look really cool after the fact to be like, oh yeah, you want to try this? And people are like, oh my God, that tastes delicious. And you're like, I know, I came up with that.
I want to hear about the soundtrack of your youth. When you were growing up in your parents' and guardians' house, what music was playing? When you were not in control of the radio, what music did your parents or guardians listen to?
So being a product of the 80s, MTV was just constantly on in our house, like just straight up leave it on that channel. So that's everything from, the early beginnings of like the tail end of like NWA into Dr. Dre's The Chronic record, Snoop Dogg, Tupac, Biggie, obviously. Then, with like 120 Minutes, getting to hear stuff like the Toadies and even like the Melvins and Nirvana as they were kind of breaking. Obviously, lots of hair metal. When it comes to like actual CDs and listening to stuff beyond what was on MTV, my mom is really big into like Rod Stewart, and this artist named Lobo, which all I remember is the song You and Me and a Dog Named Boo. And I fucking hated that song. But a lot of like classic stuff like that. My dad would listen to a lot of like Great White, Journey, Poison, even some like Slaughter, Skid Row, all that kind of stuff. And then somewhere kind of along the way with thanks to Headbangers Ball, getting introduced to bands like Megadeth, Testament, obviously Metallica, and weird bands like Primus. I remember my dad getting Sailing the Seas of Cheese record or whatever. Very eclectic listening experiences from my parents. And then even getting to the point where like when I started getting into kind of quote unquote my own music, of like the Corns and Stains and stuff like that, and some of the heavier bands that started to come out at the time, even though like I remember when Dookie came out, I wasn't allowed to have that because it swore, and my dad didn't think I could comprehend or should be listening to some of the lyrical concepts on that record. But yeah, Marilyn Manson was a big one. I remember having to make a friend burn me a tape, an actual cassette tape, and I would listen to it when I was quote unquote going to bed.
Really?
And
like under your pillow?
I had like those shitty headphones that were like mostly the super uncomfortable like KOSS headphones that were like $10 for the pair, and they were like too trebly, had no bass, just really thin sounding. And on my Sony Walkman, remember listening to Antichrist Superstar when it had first come out, and just being like scared to death, but like in a really fun way where it's like, I shouldn't be listening to this, but it's exciting and it's new. I've never really heard anything like this. And I don't know. It's kind of funny because I talk about sometimes like growing up in this interesting era of music where, you know, we saw like the 80s coming through with the 80s shred, like metal players and so forth. And to me, it became comical toward the end. But when you really think about that era of music, it was such a virtuosic environment. Like everybody, like look at some like Mr. Big. Everyone knows the one fucking song. Now that record Lean Into It that had the song on it, you know, To Be With You, like that band, Eric Martin is a fucking phenomenal singer. Billy Sheehan is like one of the best bass players still to this day. Like Paul Gilbert, like everybody in that fucking band still to this day can play circles around most anybody now. And that was the thing back then, is like everybody was fucking good. And
they were gorgeous.
Stupidly gorgeous.
On top of it, which is, you know, that was the difference between the 70s. They had to look good. They had to look good.
But it was a thing where it's like, you know, I feel very blessed to have come in, you know, toward the middle to late end of the 80s, where you're seeing, you know, hair metal. You're starting to see like pop music. Pop music was interesting because it encompassed so much. It was like pop music could be anything from Motley Crue to, you know, Billy Ocean, and it all was popular. Then it kind of coming into the early 90s of grunge and, you know, the pop music of like, you know, the Teddy Rileys coming out of, you know, Rex and Effects, doing stuff like that. You had kind of the beginnings of the hip hop scene, the underground hip hop scene, you know, with, you know, Jay Dilla and Slum Village and some of those guys coming out of Detroit, and just so many great musicians of all eras, to then kind of getting into the mid 90s where you have more of like pop and like ska's kind of coming to the mainstream, which that doesn't need to happen ever again. But it's just
of ska. My wife would be happy.
It's just interesting to kind of see what we've lived through in a, you know, 35 years of music, and just seeing how much it's changed and where it's gone. I don't think there's ever been this much growth in music in such a time frame as where we're at now currently, and where we've been when we started listening to music personally.
Absolutely. And I don't know if it's just there's more and more people to listen to it and more ways to distribute it, so that there's less constricting, so more and more artists got inspired. Mm-hmm. Maybe, I don't know, because of the internet, because there's more radio stations. There was TV, as opposed to the 60s, 70s. There was that one radio station.
Well, I'd even heard on WTF with Mark Maron. I forget who he was talking to, but they were talking about how even back in the 70s, I want to say, that there were localized stations to your region. So just because you were like, if you're in Quebec, I guess actually to make it a little bit easier in the States, if like I lived in Tennessee, I would hear something completely different upon going to Memphis, going to wherever, and then traveling wherever I'm going. Like I would hear completely different things on their local AM radio, perhaps at that point, but FM radio as well. And the idea of that really kind of, like, I was really kind of like impressed by that, because I was like, wow, that would be really, I really wish that there was something like that now, to where you could kind of really get a sense of an area and the demographic, I guess, of just kind of being like, oh, okay, like you're going to Detroit, you're going to hear everything from punk to rap to Motown to whatever. And it would be kind of cool to be like, yo, what the fuck am I going to hear while I'm wherever I am? Like, the idea of that, I think, is just really interesting, and I wish it still existed in some capacity.
Must have been fun for A&Rs going from different areas, saying, yeah, this rules. You know, I've never heard this before.
Yeah, but I feel like that was the Wild West back then, where people would just sometimes play whatever the fuck they wanted to play. Like, you know, I forget who it was, you know, like some bands would just literally, like, the B-side became a hit because someone was just like, yep, playing that. Yeah. And then people like caught on to it. And it was like, that wasn't even supposed to be played. That was kind of the bonus to when you bought the 7-inch as like this extra track, this kind of throwaway song. But I don't know. It's interesting to see how music has evolved over the years between, and I feel like we're kind of getting back to it actually, like where singles were king and it was all about having a hot single and it getting played to death. And literally when you could tour around one single, you know, back in the days of the 50s and 60s with like Elvis and, you know, all of those kind of artists, I feel like we're going back to that, you know, now that people are
with Spotify and all that.
With Spotify and the fact that no one really seemingly wants to invest in a full record anymore as a listener. I mean, I don't feel this way, but it seems the trend is give me more in lesser quantities more often, so I will keep my attention. And then subsequently, then you're just constantly in my peripherals and I'll never lose sight of you, versus like, all right, you put out a record 2 years ago, and if I didn't love it and don't play it constantly, I may not even know that you're coming around in it. Yeah, like I've already forgotten about you. Yeah. It's really weird to see how music has changed, but it's kind of going back to where it started, I think.
Absolutely. Let's talk about podcasting. I'm very interested whenever I sit down with a fellow podcaster to hear their podcast story. I know why I became a podcaster. It's because I goddamn love it. Why did you end up having conversations with people, recording it, and then releasing it for everyone to listen to?
This sounds so shitty of me to say it like this, but I got tired of seeing interviews with bands that I really loved and seeing people squander their opportunities by asking bullshit. Every Time I Die is one of my favorite bands, and I don't know how many interviews I've seen with people on Warped Tour over the years of someone being like, oh, so tell me about your new record. And they're like, it's out. It was cool. Oh, any crazy stories? And you're like, come on, like ask something better than that. Like, and that was like the thing that just kind of like really bothered me, was like, I would see all these people getting what I perceive to be really great opportunities to talk to people that I have always found interesting, and they're just not either doing their due diligence. Like, you know, you've talked about doing the Heavy Montreal interviews and so forth, so you're very much aware of doing the festival junket where you're like, hey, you want to talk to so-and-so? Sure. All right, you got 10 minutes, go. And then you're like, tough. All right, I didn't know I was going to talk to this dude. Now I have 10 minutes to try to make something be worth a shit.
At least I have the beer. I have the beer that helps me.
Yeah, and it's one of those where it's hard sometimes to make something like that good, but you can tell sometimes when you see some of these interviews that are on like YouTube and so forth of someone who you feel like did it for the free ticket to the festival. I know in the few festivals that I've gotten to cover, I myself, I think during the full weekend at Sonic Temple, I think I got to watch 6 or 7 bands for the whole weekend, I should say. Cause I wanted to be in the tent. I wanted to be there for any opportunity I could get. And I got some really good ones. And it was funny because other press people were like, why the fuck did you get to talk to so-and-so? I was told they're not doing press. And I'm like, I couldn't tell you, man. There. Like I was there. Yeah. So it's one of those where I feel like, because that's sort of how I came into wanting to do this, of feeling like I could do better than what I was seeing, I feel like any opportunity I get, I have to crush, and I have to be willing to be available and present for these opportunities, because, and I've even joked, if someone watches my interview and they're like, this fucking sucks, I could do better, I hope you have the same thing I do. Go start your own show. Yeah. I have some amazing friends that I've made because of having that initial thought of I could do better. Mm-hmm. Now let me figure out how to do it.
The more the merrier. Please challenge us.
Yeah, and you know,
podcasting better.
And I think that's the thing too, that it makes this fun. Like I said, it's not a competition, but nothing inspires me more than when, like, maybe I'll have had someone on, and I know like you and I recently have had a lot of the same people on. I think probably because Dewey introducing us to these people, and it's one of those where like sometimes like I'll ask something and I feel like I got like, maybe I didn't ask it a certain way, or it wasn't very clear what I was trying to go for. But then like there's been times like you'll ask something, or like Dewey will ask something, and I'm like, fuck, that was a way better question. And then like the response was way better, or the engagement as a result of is way better. And I totally listen to podcasts to be entertained, but I also listen to them and study them kind of like film for like sports, where it's like, I like how this person, you know, asked this question, like something I've been trying to do a lot more of. And I actually learned it by interviewing more foreigners, like people not from here in the States, and that English isn't their first language. Something I've noticed from listening to a lot of the interviews and interviewing people from abroad is that they have this tendency, and I wish us Americans could learn from it so well, is to, if you don't know something or you don't know how you want to say something, just fucking stop. Yeah. Think about it. Have it come out the way you want. Because the adverse on our side of it is, if you're just blabbing through trying to come up with whatever's in your head, trying to edit that so it's seamless, it's a nightmare. And you're going to clearly hear where it was edited. I think like you had said something in a previous episode about how you'll re-say the, like, go back like 5 or 6
stutter,
words.
Let's say, if I stutter on something, I've trained myself to restart and to say it properly. Something that's helped me a lot, and it's via Zoom, and I hope that I bring it back to real life. It's the Fred Rogers technique of interviews, I watched that movie, not the documentary about him, not the Tom Hanks movie. Yeah, not the Tom Hanks, the documentary version. And there's this thing where he would just wait. He would ask a question, and then the person would speak, and then he would wait just a little bit longer before asking the next question. And because of Zoom, or because of doing it remotely like this, you're never sure if the person's actually finished, or if it's lagging, or if it's happening. So it's something that has worked to my benefit, where I just wait that extra second, and then the person says something even more, and it's always even a little bit deeper. And I think that's very interesting. I think it's awesome that you listen to podcasts to train yourself. That's something admirable, and I wish that I did that. It's something that I'm going to strive to move towards, to hone in on my craft of interviewing people.
Do you listen back when you're done with these? Like, do you actually go back and listen to them as you're maybe editing? Like, I kind of have adopted more of like Dewey's philosophy of just throw it up, unless there's kind of like an obvious like connection issue or whatever, and then obviously try to shrink that down so it sounds a little bit more natural. But I will listen to it as I'm kind of listening, because like now I'll do like audiograms to post on socials and so forth. But then I'll even listen to the finished product just to make sure that maybe there wasn't something I missed, or as I was listening to it going like, oh fuck, I totally cut that person off. So like I've learned to, if I know, because I don't want something to go away, because I've lost really good opportunities to ask a really, really great question in the moment, but I have to cut off the guest to be like, hey, hold on just a second. And then going like, and I've realized I have to go like, I'm sorry for cutting you off, because like that's half of it. I realized I wasn't apologizing, and that sucked. But then I realized, as a result of listening back to episodes where I do that, I'd also forget to bring it back so that the guest could finish their initial.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's things like that, I think, are what separates those of us who are hobbyists from those who want to be more professional, learning how to advance yourself in this and making it the best it can be.
I definitely listen back to everything, because I edit everything myself. And with the wide time between the interview to when I release it, and I typically edit about a week out prior to release date, I guess that made sense. I typically edit it a week out prior to release date. There you go. I just did it for you. I get to relive these conversations and reflect upon how it went, but I edited it at 2.5 the speed, so everything's a little bit faster. but it's very interesting, and especially if it's with someone that I really connected with, and some like a friend. It's happened to me where I've like interviewed a friend and I edited it like way later for some reason, and it's just like we're hanging out again. It makes me so happy. But to hone in and to I realize that I have this habit that I try not to do anymore, that when I am uncomfortable, I laugh. So I'll cut those out of the podcast episode, but they will live forever on YouTube.
What is this is something I've enjoyed asking people who do podcasting. What is something in doing the podcast that you've learned about yourself that you weren't aware of before?
I'm not as much of an introvert as I thought I was.
Really?
Yeah.
Even doing the band thing, like you didn't come to that realization at any other point?
No, because I was always with Cryptopsy, and it was always a struggle accepting that I should have been there. Over the past few years, I'm finally comfortable being the singer of Cryptopsy. my first album with them, 14 years.
Yeah.
But my first album was such a disaster, and to get that a welcome, such a hideous welcome, really was hard on my ego. So it took many years of rebuilding. But with the podcast, this is a very strange thing that grew up in my house. My mother speaks English, and we live in Quebec. She doesn't speak French very often, and she has trouble. She can speak French, but she's very timid when it comes to that. So when I was a young child, whenever we were to order pizza, because I went to French elementary school, she would make me call. Okay. And this is something, to this day, I hate calling people on the phone and having to speak to them. So my wife does a lot of it for me to this day. So this is something that is tied into me believing that I'm introverted, but it's this weird, fucked up thing in my head that where I can sit down and have a conversation with you I've never spoke to you before in my life, and I'm completely comfortable. Yeah. But to call someone on the phone, I don't know. It's something that is glitched into me from my childhood.
See, what's weird is I would feel like it would almost be the exact opposite of that, because we grew up in the generation where we didn't have texting, you didn't have email. Yeah, so like you had to have more one-on-one discourse with people. And I think that's actually what drew me in. The other thing that drew me into podcasting as a medium was it harkens back to the thing. I mean, I can just talk about anything and everything, but like the connection, the one-on-one connection with conversating with somebody. One of my original ideas, and I don't necessarily want to give it away, but whatever, copyright it right here. My original idea for a podcast was called What I Learned from a Podcast. That was going to be the show. And I still may do it eventually, but because I'm constantly learning things from hearing, all these people from all walks of life talking about their experiences, things they've read, things they've done, shared experiences between the person that they're interviewing and the host or whatever. Like, it's just a wealth of information that you can glean from strangers, essentially. And it's one of those where I'm constantly starting conversations with so I was listening to this podcast the other day and this was brought up. So really it was just a cheap
perfect way to start the episode too.
Yeah. And that was the thing, is like, I had someone that wanted to do one with me, and then the goal was to bring 2 to 3 topics that you thought was interesting throughout the course of that week of whatever you're listening to. And then just discussing it more at length. And it's one of those where I think that's the other fun thing about when it's like movies or anything, like you start talking to people and you're just sharing and exchanging ideas. And I think that's something that we're largely missing still. And I think it's still why I love podcasting, like listening to, WTF and the Nerd, not the Nerdist anymore, ID10, like I love those 2 podcasts because they talk to everybody from anywhere. And I may not give a fuck about some scientist dude that's on, ID10, but they'll talk about something and I'm just like, oh my God, that's really fucking cool, or that's really interesting, or I didn't know that was a thing, or whatever. And I think that's the thing that's so fun about this medium when it works, when people are accepting of being open to sharing their experiences and not hiding behind anything or trying to be cool and just being. I think that's when this platform and this medium is just absolutely amazing. And it's what keeps me coming back and gets me excited to find new shows. Although there's only so much time in a day, and I feel so bad, almost every podcast I listen to now, because I think I have 25 or so that I listen to, I'm at least probably 10 to 15 episodes behind on every single one, because they put out 1 or 2 a week, and it's, I'm not one of the, I guess I could listen to it at 2 times the speed, but I feel like that's sort of lessening the quote unquote work that was put into it. I wouldn't listen to a record at 2 times speed just so I could listen to it all.
Get through the content. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's it just feels like it's cheapening the experience, and the thing that those 2, 3, 4, however many people went through to create this moment feels disingenuous to kind of take it in any other way than as they're presenting it to me.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to do, since we both deal with artists and we both get pitched a lot of artists from publicists. It's interesting you connect with certain people and they understand the form of a podcast versus a standard interview.
Yeah.
You can always tell when artists get that. Yes. Versus it being just this, why is this taking so long? You can see it in their eyes.
since this will be out well after the fact, I'm really excited for who I'm interviewing tomorrow because of that very reason. It's Dennis DeYoung from Styx, ex-Styx at this point.
No way.
But if you've ever heard him on any of the podcasts he's done, like he's been on Jericho's show, he was on a friend of mine from here. They did a show I think about a month ago. Dennis is one of the few people, and I felt like an asshole sending this in the email where I was like, I use StreamYard. Is Dennis capable of using this, or does he prefer legit like old school phoners? Like, totally fine to do it. I just want to make sure like he's comfortable with whatever we use. And he goes, Dennis is fine with StreamYard. It's fine. Like doing something like this. And to me, I was like, that's not normal though. Cause like a lot of the older artists that like I've had on, it's like, it's a phone. You got to call their landline. It's very, this way is the way we do it. And Dennis, on anything I've heard, he's fucking great. He's like all there. He gives good long answers. Like he is the quintessential guest you would want on a podcast. I wish he would go longer than like the 30 minutes or so that the publicist is giving me, but I know damn well that like it's going to be one I'll probably get to ask like 2 questions and he'll just handle all the bulk of all of it the rest of the way. But it's one of those where it's like, I can't wait to like, for it to be done and like to call my parents and be like, I talked to the fucking singer of Styx today. Like, I don't think that like, and that's the thing. It's not what people may expect me to have on the show, but to me, like, what's more brutal than like left field turns?
No. And there's a lot of metalheads out there that listen to Styx. A lot of extreme metal artists that wouldn't be where they were at if it weren't for Styx that inspired this, that inspired that became Cannibal Corpse. You know, it's
well, I mean,
definitely...
speak of like the ultimate like perception and reality is fucking George.
And I asked 2 questions and they given me 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I went to 30 and I was like, I got to cut this, you know? And then we cut it. We stopped recording. And he goes, oh no, I canceled everything after you. We could keep going. I was like, fuck. I totally just wrapped everything up. It was okay. I'll get him again.
I still need to get him. We were in the mix. Nikki was really fighting to get him on our show. And I think he just was kind of pressed out at that point. Oh, yeah. But I still got my questions that I don't really think anyone's really kind of hit him with, that I'm excited to. It's like Duo says, it's not a no. It's just a no right now.
I know that resonated so hard with me.
Yeah,
because I was at a certain point, as I mentioned on his, where I don't care when people say no anymore. Next, let's move next.
Yep.
And it's not like a mean thing. It's not like I'm done with you. It's like it's like I don't care. Like it's like it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. Whatever. It's not like a mean thing whatsoever. It's not in that aspect or that mindset. It's like we just don't fit. It's not gonna fit. So let's move forward, and I'll find someone that does fit. And it's no disrespect or no hard feelings with anyone. So how do we put that? It's a no for now. Circle back in 6 months.
Yeah,
amazing. Yep. So amazing that I made it the intro of my episode.
This speaking a little bit more inside baseball, I got to ask, what is, and I guess maybe I don't know if this is fun if you can't mention names. What is someone that you've asked for and they just flat out were like, nope?
I've had a lot because of the booze, of course, because of the beer.
Same.
Or I've had some where it was booked and it was totally going to happen. Huge bassist from a monumental band. And the day before, he realized that it was about beer and it totally got canceled. So, happens. I moved forward next. I got lots of interviews lined up. I'm not worried about that. But no, there's nothing. There's never been anything too horrible. Given like the first 100 episodes were my friends, right? So
right.
I'm just writing my friends, and once you get one friend, another friend wants to be on. So it was very easy because of Cryptopsy's legacy and touring. I toured many years with many amazing people to get people on the podcast. So. Yeah,
I think that's the interesting thing. One of the more, and I kept it in on both ends of the conversation just because I felt proud of it, but I also wanted to show like a little bit of humility on my side where I was like, I was such a fucking egotistical prick in this like split second that I was like, yeah, I need to leave that in because like then you can hear me literally working to rectify the situation. But I had Tommy Victor from Prong on, and I mean if you've heard him on again Josta show, like dude's fucking a great guest. And he comes on, and I'm on my like lunch break at work in my car with like my laptop and all this like extra
Really?
like shit, and people are just
unbelievable.
If people were to see like some of the places I've been when I'm doing these interviews, just because I want to get them, like it's kind of amusing. But he starts off and he was like, gotta say I was a little bit nervous for this one, and we had just put out the episode with Brian from Korn. And so I was like, okay, like big guest, and no offense to Tommy or Prong, but like, Korn is of their stature and Prong is where they are. And so I was like, oh, like, kind of said something like, oh, it doesn't, why? Because of like who we just had on or whatever. Like, and he was like, no, I don't drink. And I was like, oh, fuck, I look a dick. Because like, I was like, oh, because we're so big and we pull in these people. And you're like, no. And then at that point, like, I had done my due diligence and prepped, and I was like, okay, like now I need to turn this dude around. Like I need to make him be fully engaged and really like glad he came on to do the show. And at the end of it, he was like, I'm really glad I didn't turn this down. And you asked really great questions and questions that I'm probably going to think about even after we're done with this, because they were just really good questions. Like you did a really good job. Like I'm really glad I did this, so kudos to you. And I was like, fuck yeah. But it was one of those, like, I think sometimes that's the thing, like where, and I'm sure you're the same, like where I feel like I have to fight sometimes to prove that the show isn't a one trick pony. Like maybe the name would insist or make someone think it is. Like, I had the opportunity to interview Shannon from Godsmack, and I've wanted him on the show for so fucking long because I wanted to talk to him about drumming on Worship and Tribute, the Glassjaw record. And the publicist is like, oh, well, Shannon's sober now. And I was like, you know what? I'm fighting for this one. I was like, here's episodes I've done where all I talk about, is, this person's sobriety. And, I'm fighting for this one. You get an email back like a day or two later, and the publicist is like, Shannon will do it. And then we recorded an episode, and like, he had to go, like they kind of put a time limit on. I was like, man, we didn't like get to half of the shit I wanted to. I was like, if you want to come back like on soon so we can finish this up. Then my file got corrupted and all that shit. So like straight up the episode just gone. So thankfully I'd reached out to the publicist and was like, hey, we still have like things we need to talk about to finish the episode. We got it set up for like a week or so later. I got Shannon on, and I immediately go, hey man, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Everything we talked about, the file got corrupted. I'm starting over. Like, do you have time to basically start over? If not, we'll pick back up where we left off. I can lead you into that part of the conversation, and I'll just have to explain, like, through no fault to anybody's, like, the opportunity that I had to talk to you and the time I got to talk to you was just lost. And he goes, nope, I got all the time. Let's go. He called me like 25 minutes before he was supposed to. And then we did like 3 hours on record, and then talked for another like 50 minutes after that. And was one of those, like, we covered everything from his sobriety to the Glassjaw record he worked on, to Wrathchild America, to his turtles that he has, and like all this other shit and everything in between. And then at the end, like when we were done, like wrapping up, like actually just talking, he was like, man, like next time I'm around, like in any of the bands, like reach out, like we need to hang. And I was like, I mean, I don't know how we're going to do that. I don't have your number. And I mean, I can hand you my stuff to your publicist and pass it along, I guess. And he goes, take my number down. And then like, I was like, all right. And I've texted him very sporadically since then, but he replies pretty quickly, all things considered. And it's one of those where I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe like, Godsmack was like one of my first shows I went to with my dad outside of Korn. And so to me, it's just kind of crazy to be like, wow, a dude I've been seeing like for a long time, and a dude that like I've admired his career outside of, this big mainstream rock act, is somewhat on a friendship level. And it's fucking weird, all because I fought to get him on the show because the perception was, well, he's sober and he doesn't drink. And it's like, no, I'm going to get something out of it. And I've even kind of gone the opposite route. And I know this is something you've done too, like with Dewey, with Dave Shapiro, with, a handful of people you've had on that don't drink and have never drank really. Where it's like, it's not about this. This is just an icebreaker. And I think you and I are very much similar in the idea of like the whole point of the show is almost like when friends are drinking at a bar, and just, it's the fly on the wall kind of part of it.
Exactly.
And so it could be at a coffee shop, it could be anywhere, but it felt really good sometimes when you get some people that have said no, and then you get them on and the conversation goes well and you actually kind of become friends with some of these people and you're like, all right, it's a weird validation that I can't really explain to people if you've never really gone through it. And you are probably one of the few that, because of your name and because of the show, totally get where I'm coming from with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I rarely fight for it. I did a whole sober February,
right,
where I booked everything with that in mind, and I sought out artists that were sober. So that aspect of it, I understand, and I definitely wanted to do it, and I will do it again because it was very interesting, and I think it's very important to, showcase a moderate and responsible relationship with alcohol.
Absolutely.
As much as I love drinking and I love talking about drinking and sharing drinks with people, I think it's important to have a balanced relationship with drinking. So that's really why I did Sober February, and to connect with artists and to create a relationship and to create a platform where I can look back and say, oh, but I've done this. I can do episodes with people. It's not just about beer. I also get a lot of people that are afraid because it's craft beer. But I'm not the biggest. It doesn't matter. We're just gonna bring whatever you want.
I assume you're talking about Buzz, who likes his like Miller Lights and OEs.
I haven't had him yet. Trevor does like his hazies though, but I'll get Buzz eventually. I know he's fun.
I asked him one day when he was skateboarding around at the venue, the intersection here. He was like on his skateboard during All That Remains set, and I was like, "Hey man, like." I was like, I really need to get you like on the show. And he was like, oh, you got one of them podcasty things? And I was like, yep, I got one of those. He goes, oh man, I don't know. And I was like, you can drink beer, smoke weed or whatever. And he was like, I was like, sometimes we kind of talk about those things. He's like, I don't know. Those are weird. And I was like,
some people just aren't into it. Some people don't like the medium.
But he's just so good. Like, I feel like you just put a microphone in front of that dude and just let him go. And it's going to be gold for however long he talks. Like, he's the best. Like, fuck it, get him on an episode and play Edward 40 Hands. I'm sure like that would be great. You couldn't hold your microphone unless you tape that to your other hand.
Get someone to hold the mic for me on a hockey stick.
That's very
Canadian.
Yeah, that's very Canadian. What has been one of your favorite guests that like? Okay, I guess I'll preface it by saying this. So when I started the show, I had what I called a 1-year plan, and then I had like a 5-year goal of like people I wanted to have on where I was like, within 5 years, this is roughly the level I hope to be at where I can get X, Y, and Z.
Are you there? Because you're at your 5 years now.
I crushed most of my 1-year and 5-year goals before my first year was done. Like getting Andy from ETID in the first year, I was like, holy shit, I can't believe I got some from ETID. Like, again, favorite band. The way it happened was pretty fucking organic. I DM'd him because he was wrestling out this way back before everyone really knew he was big into wrestling as much as he has always been. And we just basically talked wrestling and sort of music by proximity of wrestling. And it was so fucking cool. It was like that was a 5-year goal. Like where I was like, get someone from Every Time I Die within like year 5. And I got him probably less than halfway through the first year. So getting some of these people, it's like I've kind of far exceeded almost all my goals. One of the last goals I really have, which it was going to be, I'm approaching it, but I think due to the pandemic, I kind of lost about 1.5 years to really make this a viable, realistic goal, was to get approved for an international festival as press. Because at that point, that means you have to have either grown the show to be at a level where people internationally know of it, or that your presence in an area is strong enough numbers wise that you can back like why you deserve to be there. It's a weird acceptance thing that apparently I need.
You can definitely do that. I think the pandemic would have helped because we could talk to anyone, and we definitely did.
Yeah.
Because before it was always face to face. I would have never done this like this.
No,
it was so no. Vox and Hops was supposed to be backstage in a tour bus, in a bar, in a van. That was Vox and Hops, and Vox and Hops for myself really up until the pandemic. I didn't have a list. I was hanging out with my friends and drinking craft beer and asking them questions. That's really what Vox and Hops was all about. So when the pandemic hit and I realized everyone was home, I was like, then I made a list. I have a COVID list. It's still on my phone, and I think I've nailed most of those. There's a few, there's obviously the huge megastars, which I have not got yet, but hope to get one day, such as like Mike Patton. I'm circling him. I'm circling him. I've done people from 3 of his projects. Trey Spruance, that was a big one. Getting Trey Spruance was something that was really cool for me. I listened to Mr. Bungle, and
what a fucking great band.
Secret Chiefs 3.
That was actually, speaking of records that I grew up on, the California Mr. Bungle record got a lot of love. And that weird one, I can never remember what it's called, but with the weird clown.
Disco Volante? No, it's is it? I think it's just a self-titled. Am I crazy?
Yeah, I think so. And it's got that lenticular cover of the clown face thing. Yeah.
Disco Volante is the one in between there. That's like super jazzy and fucked up.
Okay. Yeah. California record got played a lot in my house as a kid. And I was like,
really? So lucky.
I mean, Faith No More, the real thing. Jesus Christ! I want to buy it so bad on vinyl, but I have this like hard time spending like $50 roughly on a record, where it's like, okay, that could buy me maybe 2 or 3 other records I like, but to have, goddamn, you want to talk about a band that just transcended for me, like. That was a band that kind of showcased that you could blend genres. I mean, like on the real thing, like Surprise You're Dead. What a fucking killer riff. That like, and then you have Woodpecker from Mars, which is completely different. Epic, obviously being the big single from Out of Nowhere. Like, I mean, just you talk about like a playlist kind of record, like where it just hits on everything. And then even going back to like We Care a Lot and stuff like that, like just what a fucking great band. I count my lucky stars. I got to see Mikey Borden play with Korn many, like on the Issues tour when David broke his wrist. And my dad and I were like, holy shit, that's fucking Mikey Borden. Like both being really fucking stoked on it. I have a weird predilection to drummers, and I even made the comment to Dewey the other day because I talked to Chris from Poison the Well a couple of days ago, and I was like, for whatever reason, I just seem to hit it off really well with drummers. I don't know what it is. Like drummers and I are like tight. Like I always have really good conversations with them, and I usually become really good friends with those guys, and I don't know why. Like maybe it's because I secretly wish I could be a good drummer, and I pay attention to a lot of drumming stuff on records, and maybe a lot of people just don't. So maybe it's just giving them the platform to kind of talk about what they do when it's largely ignored. But yeah, Mikey Borden would be fucking cool to get on the podcast.
I completely agree. That'd be amazing.
I feel like you'll get him.
I've been hunting for Patton. Maynard from Tool. It's all these like basically the kids, the people that I listened to when I was young, right?
Would you really this sounds weird. Do you really want to talk to Maynard? Because I feel like that's the kind of a dude who wouldn't take it seriously, would kind of be very whatever, and would just make it difficult. And I feel like that would ruin my love of like Meredith Arms is like one of my favorite records of all times. I feel like if he was a dick to me or made fun of me, and whether I realized it in the time or not, I feel like I would be like, man, fuck this dude, and like break all these records and shit.
That. I wouldn't want that.
But it seems like he's that kind of person.
When I set up to do Guar, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to interview them for real.
Who did you talk to from Guar?
Balsac and the Troll.
Okay, so I got to talk to Michael, and I asked the publicist, can I talk to him as him, not Blothar? And he was like, no, they're always in character. And I was like,
this is weird.
And I was like, it's so, how the fuck do you prepare to talk to a character that doesn't care about anything? And so I literally prepared 2 sets of questions. And I showed up to the show the next day, and I was like, hey, I know your publicist said that I have to interview you as Blothar. I legitimately have like 2.5 pages of questions for you as Michael. I'm good to go with whatever you want to do, but just know I would like to talk to you as the person. And he was like, let's do that then. But I think it's because I did the work, and he saw that like I didn't waste my fucking time, like like whatever. So I think it kind of instilled a little bit of trust to do an interview as himself. But I commend anyone who has interviewed Guar as Guar, because I feel like that's just it's got to be so hard.
Cool. I went through what I wanted to ask them, and they answered it as themselves, but also with the attitude of the characters.
It's just such a mind fuck to like. I have thought about going back, and because Guar tours here quite a bit, and they just put out that like acoustic record or whatever, and I thought about reaching out and being like, "Fuck it, let's do it. Let's do a Guar interview," and then I was just like, "Nah." I had like the one good experience of doing something with Guar in a very serious capacity that like I kind of don't want to taint that. I don't know. It's weird. It's just such a weird band. Same with like I really want to get John Goblikon on.
Yep.
But like I know that's going to be one where it's just complete bullshit. Like where it's like, all right, this is going to be, I'm going to try to play a straight man and just set you up with like things so you can be funny. And like, it's just a funny exchange between two different people, or a goblin and a person. But that's one that I think would be fun, but I'm also in the same boat like with the Guar thing where it's like, all right, like how seriously do you take this? Talking to a goblin. How absurd.
He's a hype. He's a crowd hyper.
He is the guy who used to skank for the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, the interpretive dancer, and the Prodigy. The Prodigy had one too, didn't they?
Yeah.
God, I want that gig. There needs to be a band that just needs an interpretive dancer, and I'll just dance shittily to it.
It's probably sweaty. It's a sweaty job.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about collabs. Have you done a collab? I live for collabs. I'm so excited about collabs. I love making beers.
So
has there been a Brewtally Speaking beer release?
Not yet. I am in, and I'm actually looking up for those that are watching the video and like, why are you looking at your phone? So I really want to do, and actually City Built is cheap plug. They're the brewery I want to work with, just because they do. And here's kind of the segue once I'm done talking about this, that actually kind of is on a different project that I'm collaborating on in the beer space. So my thing is I want to do a beer, but I understand, at least from my perspective of wanting to do something, I have nothing to offer the brewery. Like I don't have a name big enough to like be like, oh my God, you're doing a beer. Like everyone's going to want to buy that because of that. That's not the case. So what I want to do is I want to come up with a beer that I think is good. It's actually what I would want to drink and I'd want to try. And that's going to kind of be my contribution to the process. And yeah, we'll put like, my logo, like person thing on it or whatever. And I'll try to do as much as I can to push it. But beyond that, I want the beer to stand alone as something that will sell, because at the end of the day, that's what matters in that space, is it has to sell. Will it ever be a mainstay? No. I would love it to be something where it's like, a lot of these other breweries do very limited series where it's like every year we do this thing, whatever this thing is called, and they do these collaborations. So my idea was to do a rum barrel coffee flavored beer, because I've not really seen that. But the rum barrel will allow it to kind of get that sweet flavor to kind of counter kind of the bitter flavor of the coffee. And it's not something I've really seen done that I can think of. And the other idea I had was doing a tequila barrel finished drink there, or maybe even a gin. There is a gin drink that I've made that a friend of mine gave me the recipe for, and I didn't have all the ingredients, so I kind of had to doctor it up with what I had. And my idea was, since the gin that I made it with was local to here in town and actually is like a block and a half away from City Built, my goal was to go, hey, even more collaboration. Let's get them, give us a gin barrel. We'll make something as close to this drink as I can possibly get in a beer form. And then that'll be that. When I kind of approached that idea with Ed, who owns City Built, he was like, we're actually already working with them and we're doing something with their gin barrels. And I was like, fuck. So I was onto a good idea, but they're already doing it on their own. That idea actually came from Founders doing, because I like port wine. They did a port wine beer that was fucking phenomenal. And I can't believe I'd never thought to have ever done something in a wine barrel or anything like that. I mean, we see so much of it with sherry casks and, obviously whiskey barrels and so forth. So like, it seems like a no-brainer that someone would have done it. But my goal is to kind of marry like liquor and beer in some way. And if we can do it with someone that's local, beyond just the brewery, like that's something I'm really interested in, because again, I'm all about collaborating with as many people as possible to make something that didn't exist until the 2 or 3 of us got together. I've even kind of worked up a name, kind of getting ahead of it, but like with them being called City Built and us being called Brewtallyspeaking, I think we was going to go with something like City Brewt. Kind of just a rough idea. So the foundation is there. The pandemic kind of threw a lot of things off as far as the schedule of when they were going to start doing their mainstays and all the other things that they keep making. So it looks like we're probably looking at maybe next year before we can do it, but it is definitely something I want to do. I feel kind of blessed and also cursed in the fact that I live where Founders is and Bell's is like an hour away and stuff like that, where I have these big breweries, so I can kind of see what a lot of people are doing. But I also feel like it makes it harder because people are trying to compete for any little bit of space they can get. So maybe doing a collab with me doesn't make a whole lot of sense when they could do something that makes more sense for their own business. So it's really just kind of figuring out where everything fits and how to do it, because you don't want to release a beer that makes no sense seasonally. Like if you're putting out a stout and you're trying to you're like, oh, well, we have availability in spring. And you're like, no one's drinking stouts in spring. Like typically.
Always stout season.
I mean, for me, yes, it is. But I mean, if you know your beer seasons, you know that that's typically your fall and winter beers. So it is something I want to do. It is something that I have put a lot of thought into and have started the initial groundwork conversations to do. Even the same, I'm trying to even get like a coffee made. I'm not the biggest coffee drinker, but I find that to be interesting. And I feel like just kind of putting yourself into something else and kind of going like, this is me in a different capacity, I think is really interesting. So don't know what that's going to look like, but have some ideas as well for that. Something I've actually been talking about a little bit more is a project that I started with a friend, and we're kind of at a standstill for legality reasons. So I actually have, this is kind of a fun story to tell on this podcast. So Run the Jewels did a series of beers called No Save Point. It was to commemorate their release of the song No Save Point that was in Cyberpunk 2077. And they released the song and the beer. They did a beer world tour. They had 13 breweries, 12 beers across the world. But it was right when the pandemic hit. Like literally when the pandemic started and almost everybody was locking down. And so I had the idea, since shows were gone, you can't see people anymore because you're having to quarantine and be away from people. That it was really interesting to me to work with a friend of mine to try to collect as many of the beers as I could. The hard part becomes getting around some of the legalities of shipping beer across
archaic laws. I hate them. They make me so upset. Prohibition laws.
Yep. And what was kind of interesting in doing this was learning the liquor laws internationally. So like, I had a friend who lived in one area, and I was able to buy in like the Netherlands and then send him the beer. Was able to buy him another one and send it to him, and then he'd send it to me. And it was one of those things where it gave me something to do during a pandemic when all I really wanted to do was like be bummed that I can't go to shows. I can't see my friends. I can't do anything. So it gave me kind of a purpose. And I collected out of the 12, I think I have 7 or 8. I wasn't able to get the one from Mexico. I wasn't able to get the one from Australia because they were in a lockdown and my friends in King Parrot weren't able to get me. Because I could have bought it, but I couldn't. Yeah, long story. So there was that one. I didn't get the one from Australia, Mexico. Brooklyn sold out before I could get it. And there's one other one I'm blanking on where it was from. But the funny thing is I had the idea to just get all the beers with my friend. And then we're like, he made a video recently because he's a big Fernet fan. And so he made a video around Christmas time of him with all this Fernet stuff, a bicycle, making his Fernet tree and all this kind of stuff. And it looked really cool. And I was like, hey, what if we did something like that? But like, we're drinking the different beers and we're trying them and being like, hey, so like, whatever. Well, then it turned into this thing where City Built was one of the breweries selected to make one of the beers. They had made their own series inspired by Run the Jewels stuff, and they got hit with a cease and desist. And then that's actually how they got onto the radar of them to do their own No Save Point beer, because it basically everyone got the base of the beer and then put their own spin on it. So I had the idea to then make a documentary, basically telling the story that during a pandemic, when no shows could happen, people aren't allowed to interact with friends, you know, just the sense of community is gone, that Run the Jewels basically went on a beer world tour and combined the art space, the craft beer space, and the music spaces all together in a very interesting and unique way that I've not seen. This is kind of the story of us collecting those beers and sharing the experience of trying these beers. And then I had the idea to reach out to all the breweries involved and go like, and ask them 2 questions, like, how did you get involved? And then how did you come up with, you know, your beer? So the first one that I got to do was Vandestreek. And after, you know, we're doing because they're from the Netherlands. And so when we got done doing the interview, they're like, so have you had ours? And I was like, yours was one of the other ones they couldn't get. And they're like, we'll send you a case. And I thought they meant a case of like some of these and like some of their other beers. It was just a straight up case of this. So most of my fridge is filled with these, in addition to all the other Run the Jewels beers that I haven't had yet, because we're waiting to do the thing. When I started reaching back out to everybody to be involved, most everyone was like, sounds good. You got to talk to this person, or this is the person you need to talk to. And everyone seemed to be on board. One brewery out of San Antonio, Weathered Souls, was like, have you been in contact with the RTJ camp? And I was like, not yet. The goal is to come to them after we put together like a sizzle reel, because what I don't want to do, and like a lot of people do, is I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing. And you never fucking do it. So what I wanted to do is have there be something to tangibly show and go, we're starting this. Here's kind of what we're envisioning it to be like. Everyone else is kind of on board. We would like to have you on board and tell your side of the story. How did you pick the breweries? How did you pick to do a hazy IPA as your base beer? So basically flipping the 2 questions around. And then we would hand it off to my friend's editor, because they had done a documentary on the history of pipe smoking, tobacco smoking. So I knew that we had some resources that could make it look good. And then I hit a stalling point, because when the San Antonio place was like, we're not going to do it until Run the Jewels is officially involved or not. Like, we're just not going to do it. I had since learned about the documents that they signed, like the NDAs and so forth, surrounding how each company got picked and what they could or couldn't do, mainly couldn't do. So like a big one was no brewery that was associated with it could do a collaborative beer for a year after, which I thought was interesting.
Wow.
So it was a thing where somebody else goes.
But then Weathered Souls launched Black is Beautiful, where everyone's doing a collab with them.
Yeah, but I think that's a charity thing, and no one's really going to bitch about that.
No, of course
not. And I heard some really interesting stuff, because in my time in San Antonio, I went to a brewery and I tried their Black is Beautiful. And Mark, because he lives in San Antonio and is really big on craft beer and all that stuff, was like, so the place you went to, they did not disclose the money they made off of that. They did not donate any of the money to charity like they were supposed to. And it's a big problem out here for them in the craft beer community, which I find interesting that there's all these stories. So fast forward, you know, I'm reaching back out to everyone to kind of get the project going again. And someone goes, hey, does the RTJ camp know about this? And then I was like, before I could even reply back, hey, I'm including the RTJ camp into this. And I was like, fuck, like too soon. I get an email, and the people because of City Built's experience of them getting hit with a cease and desist, I was like, they're probably going to hit me with them right away. Like, just nope. And the whole goal all along was like, RTJ probably won't be involved in this, but maybe they'll be impressed with what we did, that when they do the next round, they'll be like, hey, let's get ahead of this one. Let's have you do the same thing and be involved in this from this point forward. they were like, what's the scope of what you're looking to do? Kind of tell us what you're looking at doing. And, like what's your experience in this capacity? And I was like, I do a podcast. I've done a podcast like for a handful of years. Here's the link to the podcast. So like interviewing people is something I know how to do. My friend did a documentary, so like he has more experience doing that side of things. So collectively between the two of us, like we can make a good competent product that has a focused direction. And I sent it to them and they didn't reply back. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but now we're in this like weird holding spot where it's like, do we keep going and just kind of DIY it and go fuck it until someone hits us with a cease and desist? Or
and then you get that, at the end of the movie. We reached out to the
So now
they declined to be a part of this documentary.
Yeah. So, but now it's a thing where I think everybody else, because the last round of me trying to hit everyone up to do the interviews, almost everybody is just kind of like at a standstill right now, where I'm just like, I think until I either get the blessing or denial from the RTJ camp, that's really going to depend on how this project either gets delivered, just dies on the vine basically. But that's been something I've really been looking forward to doing, because like I said, it merges 3 different communities that I feel very passionately about, between, craft beer, the craft space, music, and, just the sense of community and collecting. And I mean, to a degree, even video games, since it started from a video game. But it's probably one of the most ambitious projects I've ever tried to do. And like when I kind of told some friends about it, they were like, how do you even know how to do any of that? I was like, just like the podcast, I don't know, but I'm not going to let my limitations on knowing what to do stop me from having the drive or desire to want to create something that I think and know in my heart of hearts is going to be something that people will find interesting.
It's a killer idea. And I hope that it comes to fruition.
I do too.
I hope that at least you finish it, even if it's just a do-it-yourself, just self-released project, because the idea behind it is really cool. And you have those interviews recorded, so you can definitely create something from what you have. And you've been working on it for a while, so hopefully the band is interested and wants to do it. Good publicity is good publicity, and they're a cool band. I'm sure they'll come around.
Hopefully. So that's a kind of my collaborative nature in this space of beer and liquor and all that kind of stuff. But I feel it's been weird because I've talked about it on other podcasts on my show, and I always cut it out because I'm like, I don't want anyone to know about it. And now I'm just kind of like at the point where I want people to know about it, because I think at the end of the day, what I really hope it does is, like I said, I've never done a documentary. I've never even shot a film or anything. But I love documentaries. I love the medium, and just like I do podcasting. And I started doing this without knowing anything about anything. I don't know shit about audio. I don't know anything, but I didn't let that stop me. And I hope that if I at least maybe tell the story of like, I had this idea, it just kept snowballing. And then now here I am, and the fucking Run the Jewels camp is at least aware of what I'm doing. They may shut it down, but like, think about that stupid idea I had. 4 months later, 3 months later, Run the Jewels officially is involved in some capacity with what an idea I had. It just goes to show that like you can make anything happen if you are willing to put in the work and just not afraid to chase whimsies, basically, which is something I always pull from Kevin Smith. Create your own fucking thing.
It's true. You have to fake it. You have to believe in yourself to make things happen. And anyone that's listening, that's the absolute truth. If you doubt yourself and you don't even try, you'll definitely not do anything. I would have never become an internationally renowned rock musician, a death metal vocalist that tours the world, and a podcaster if I had just settled on, I don't know how to do this.
I have a question for you in the space of death metal, because like it's not something I'm not the biggest fan of, and doing my other co-host podcast discography discussion, like all this year, I feel like all he's been throwing at me is like death metal shit, like where I'm like, I feel like the only new thing that I can notice about this is like there's tinges of like symphonic black metal kind of thrown in there, but like I don't really know much about that either. So I don't know. But something I've always thought to be kind of interesting, and especially from the vocalist perspective, you have some of these bands, and like I think like we did one on Cannibal Corpse or not Cannibal Corpse, I'm sorry, Cattle Decapitation. And it was wild because like I was really not a fan of that band's early stuff. As they have gone on, I do see the growth and maturity in the band within the genre and so forth. But like the thing that's crazy too is like when you read the lyrics and you see some of these lyrics and they're really like thought provoking. But unfortunately, I feel like given how they have to be presented, does them no favors. Is it hard to write lyrics that mean something to you, but given how you have to present them based on the band that you're in, knowing that largely people are probably not even going to know that you're literally saying anything that you're saying?
I find concepts, I really enjoy concept records for that exact reason. I've been doing that since 2012, since our self-titled. So I find a concept that I want to explore, and then I am more of like a storyteller. So I find real life things that have happened, horrible atrocities, and then I just basically storytell what happened.
Okay.
And I try to be as poetic as I can be, but I'm definitely, like my predecessor, the original vocalist of Cryptopsy, Lord Worm, was a masterful extreme metal lyricist. Just dark, poetic humor, very obscure, strange, and that really set the bar for Cryptopsy lyrics. Mike DeSalvo came in at a different way of approaching lyrics. He's a bit more straightforward, but still very intelligently presented. So I had a lot to work with. I could either go one way or the other, and I really went just in my own voice. I try to be descriptive and obscure, dark, gory. Having played None So Vile in its entirety really helped me construct my lyrics, as I really got to understand Lord Worm's thought process a little bit better when it came to constructing lyrics. I'm definitely nowhere near him. He's got this weird, strange approach to writing. I'm definitely not a writer. I'm not someone that writes actively and says, this is a song. And Lord Worm was like that. He had like a book of lyrics, poems. I'm not like that. I'll attack a song and I'll write lyrics for that song. But I know what my concepts are about. And that's the biggest struggle, to find something to write about. Something that can fall into what Cryptopsy needs to be, and something that I'm comfortable to explain.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a genre that the few bands like really in the extreme metal, like the last Dying Fetus record was like the first time I really walked away being like, yeah, I get it. Like, but it's one of those for me, like, and my point of contention always like on discography discussions, I'm like, I know, and actually I think Dewey and I have been talking about this because he's like, well, do you like, he's into punk music and stuff like that. And I'm typically not. And even going back to like your first question of like, what did you grow up listening to? I think the problem I have is like, I'm a big pop sensibility kind of guy with good production. And that's been something. And I told Dewey, I was like, dude, all my metal that I grew up on, super fucking slick, really well produced. Like, so even though like, I know there were underground bands at that time, like the Florida death metal scene was kind of coming and so forth. It's like, it's hard for me to listen to some of this stuff and be like, is it like, I feel like it's almost a badge of honor of being like, it's the shittiest recording we could possibly afford. Like, it's
they
like
just said they didn't understand how to capture the sound is really what it was.
For sure. And I feel like, the one example I've ever seen of that was seeing Meshuggah on the Tool Lateralis tour, which I think they would have been on, wasn't Chaos Fear. It would have been.
It was Chaos Fear.
Was it? Okay. Yeah. But I remember seeing them and I was like, God, this band sucks. They sound like them. I was like, they sound like shit. The dude's riding some weird invisible roller coaster and like it just sounds like garbage. Now I have since fell in love with that band. I've seen them a couple of times since then. And the exact opposite is the case. And I realized that at that point in time, 8-string guitars really didn't exist. No one knew how to fucking mix them, let alone in a fucking arena. And it took technology to catch up with them and what they had to be able to present it in a way that made sense as a listener, I think. And that's the hard part is at least I feel like a band like Meshuggah has grown sonically. And I like my metal, my symphonic death metal and all that kind of shit. Like, you know, as much as everyone hates Demi Moore Gear, I fucking love that band because they sound good. It's mixed well. Like you can pick apart everything and you understand why things are there. When I go back and listen to some of the old death metal shit, I'm just like, it just sounds like blast beats. And then like who can like play the fastest fucking up and down the scale riff and you know, and as a vocalist, I feel like all you can kind of do when everything is just percussive is be also equally a percussive instrument. And it's just like, it just sounds like a wall of noise. And that's been my
beautiful wall of noise.
to some, yes. For me, it's one of those, like it's really never been my thing. But thankfully doing discography discussion, like I had told my co-host, I was like, dude, it would be so easy for me just to shit on it and be like, I don't fucking like it. I've never liked it. It sucks. I don't like it. But I have to realize this is someone's favorite band. This is someone's favorite record. This is a genre that they really love, and it means a lot to them. And the camaraderie they have when going to shows with people who love this music too. I can't discredit that just because I don't like it or I don't understand it. So then I came into it going, I need to at least try to find something positive to talk about and at least be like, it's not my thing, but this was kind of cool. Or I at least noticed that this was happening over the last couple of records. And it's funny because like with that approach where I really thought a lot of people were going to shit on me, a lot of people were like, hey, at least you're trying and you didn't discredit us. And like, I've even had that same approach, like when having
the bands write you?
Some actually funny thing is like we did an episode of Living Sacrifice, and I know it's not like super extreme or anything, but band I'd never listened to, and I guess someone in the band or the band themselves like checked it out, and they were like had made a comment about how like they liked the comments I said as a not long time fan of the band about the growth and all that kind of stuff of the band. So it is kind of weird because sometimes like you don't assume people are going to hear this thing. Like adversely, we did an episode and it ended up costing me a friendship because someone heard me talking about a band they're in, and I was like 95% positive the whole way through. I think at the end I was just like, it is like this band's discography it's fine. Like some of it is wrapped up in nostalgia for me. The rest of it is like, you know, I kind of hopped off on this record and they're not bad. It's the band growing and being the band, you know, 10, 15 years after they've been a band. It's just not really my thing. Like my musical tastes have changed and this isn't really what I'm into. And I had literally been texting, and I did a thing with them on Instagram live like a day before we dropped that episode. Everything was fine. We're all good. And then after the episode dropped, I get a text back like the next day. It was like, don't ever fucking contact me again. And then I got unfollowed on everything. And I was like,
really?
Damn. All right.
Okay.
So the adverse of, you know, I made the comment, you can make really great friends doing this. You can also, I guess, put your foot in your mouth, and it can cost you some friendships too that you've made.
If it's your opinion though.
And I think that's the hard thing. Dewey kind of gave me a little bit of shit because he was like, that's why like doing a show like that where you're critiquing basically artists' creative outputs, it's hard because especially if you're friends with them, like and I guess that's like where I'm different. Like I can separate a person from a band. I may not like your band, but I like you. And I do that all the time. Like there are a lot of bands that I'm friends with people in the band. I don't fucking like their band, but to me, that doesn't matter. Like, it's like, how many friends do you have personally that don't listen to your show?
All of them.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? That never bothers me. Like, because I'm like, I get it. Like, it's fine. You don't have to like the thing I do, but like you're supportive of it in some capacity.
Same thing. I got used to that with Cryptopsy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like, to me, like I figured this person probably would be the same way, but it was definitely not the case. And like, I've thought about reaching out and just being like, look, like, I'm sorry if like something I said, or like even guilty by association of like the things the two other people that I was with said upset you, but like, I don't have to like you don't have to like my fucking show and you can still like me. Like everything that we have done is two people that know each other. I've always been supportive of your other creative endeavors. I always like put you on, like I helped you do some other stuff, which actually just came to fruition. Like yesterday I saw, and I was like, And I saw that they were really excited about that thing that happened. And I was like, yeah, that happened because of me. Because like, I believe in you and I like you as a person. So I championed you to these other people. And now like there's a new relationship that was formed out of that. And it really sucks because like, I feel really bad because like, I don't feel like I deserved the harsh reaction to something that I feel was very not justified to have that kind of a reaction. But in the last week or so since it's happened, I do kind of realize, like, I guess if I put my life's work into something and I was a big fan of this thing too, it probably would be a little hard to hear someone that I am really good friends with and really value their opinion or whatever to kind of shit on it. I would probably be a little bummed, but I feel like I at least would go, hey man, I heard you say these things and that kind of really bummed me out. Like, can we talk about that? Or like, you know, something like that. Like, I feel like that's at least where I would go versus just kind of straight up being like, don't ever fucking contact me again. And it's like, damn. Yeah.
No, we need some maturity in life. And as an artist, you need to be mature. Not everyone's going to like what you do. And you can be friends with people that don't like what you do. And that's.
Well, I think that's even where like interesting shit happens in this space of like where you don't agree.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where the sparks fly.
Yeah.
John, let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
One last question. Classic Vox and Hops wrap-up question. It probably doesn't happen to you very often because you still have a fridge full of beer, but every once in a while it happens to everyone. What is your hangover cure?
Actually, I would have said water is my hangover cure or greasy McDonald's food. McDonald's Coke, actually. More recently though, this may not be legal wherever anyone else lives, but smoking weed. Typically if I smoke after a night at the bar, and drink like a glass of water or whatever, but if I smoke right before I go to bed, that seems to pretty much eliminate any hangover.
Amazing. John, thank you so much for taking time talking to me about podcasting, talking about me. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about your life, about being a podcaster, about craft beer. I truly appreciated it. It's been a true blast. Massive cheers to you and long life to Brewtally Speaking podcast.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I talked so much.
No, you're wonderful. Cheers.
So that was my conversation with Matt, again, of the Vox and Hops podcast. I want to thank him for having me on, and it's kind of fun. I like doing and being the guest on another podcast because part of me gets a little nervous because I don't know where the conversation's going, but I think it's good sometimes to be on the other side of things when you're not always leading something. And, you know, as I kind of had made the comment of that, I listen back to the episodes I do. I listen to other podcasts like I'm studying film, like if I were in sports, like an athlete, trying to get better. And the thing that I really love about being on the other side of things is having to really be in the moment with someone because I'm not thinking of the next question or I'm not really kind of going from there. I have to just kind of let things happen to me and then react. So it was really cool kind of getting to be on that side of things and kind of see how Matt does. And something I really took away when listening back actually to this was I love how Matt, you know, had made the comment about the Fred Rogers way of interviewing where you let someone talk and then you wait 5-10 seconds and then sometimes they'll give you more. And something that they say after you thought they were done and even they thought they were done is actually really special. And so I think that might be something I try to adopt moving forward. I have a couple interviews this week as of when I'm recording this. So potentially that might be something I try to incorporate into my repertoire of talking to people. So very much looking forward to that. Again, I want to thank Matt for having me on. You're basically, other than the intros and outros, you're basically getting the exact same podcast. So if you like what you heard, then by all means, please go support Vox and Hops. I think what they are doing in this scene, in the podcasting space, as well as the craft beer scene, cannot be understated enough. I think this is, whereas I just like talking about what I'm drinking, Matt is actually boots to the ground. He's making beers literally happening. I'm literally holding a beer that essentially, because of his love of beer and metal and so forth, he has made come to fruition, no pun intended. And it's one of those things that it's just fucking inspiring to see someone who's not just satiated being like, I'm going to do a good podcast. Boom, I got that. Now I'm going to make beer. Boom, I did that. I mean, the dude also does playlists that you can get on Spotify, as you heard him say. Like, it's just incredible the amount of things that he does to support a genre that he loves so much. And it just oozes out of him. Like, you can just tell he loves and breathes this. So greatly appreciated to be on his show. I don't know if I'm metal enough to be on that show, but if you would like to keep up with all things Vox and Hops, I would strongly urge you to go over to the website, voxandhops.com. That is literally the landing page for everything. You can go to the Spotify playlist. You can see the mini documentaries they did for the Brutal North America collab series. You can see, YouTube links, Facebook links, Instagram links. He's not on Twitter that I saw. And you can also keep up with everything he's doing with Cryptopsy as well. I mean, he happens to also be in the band too. So again, overachiever much. But it's one of those things, just love what he's doing. And I think a lot of you, if you like this show, will really like what he's doing over there. So please go support him as well. All the things I just said about the Vox and Hops website definitely applies to this. It's our landing page for a reason. Everything you need to know about our show is over there. Greatly appreciated if you go check it out, share the shows, rate, review, send us an email, brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. Give us some feedback. We posted the episode with Marcos from POD and getting a lot of feedback of people remembering, where they were when they bought that record in conjunction to 9/11, just a lot of interesting things. And that's what makes these shows a lot more fun, is when you engage with me on socials and so forth and kind of keep the conversation going from the podcast. Like that's why I love podcasts, and I love talking to people about ideas that were shared between the guest and the host or whomever. I think that's how you just have more fun with this. So love all the feedback, love any interactions I get. Please rate, review, subscribe. You know why that's important. And last but not least is our sponsors. Want to run them down real quick again. Bean Bastard. Go to thebeanbastard.com. Pick up some delicious coffee. If you live in the Buffalo, New York area, look up their brick and mortar store. Go support a local business. On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point. Use our code BSP15 and take 15% off your total purchase order. And last but not least is Rockabilia. Go to rockabilia.com. They have over 500,000 items in their online store. Get you laced up with some awesome threads of all kinds of different bands. I guarantee if you're into something music related or TV related, I'm sure they have something for you. Use our code BREW and take 10% off your total purchase order. And we've been inching our way to episode 300. Next week we finally get there. No more teasing. We're getting right to it. Episode 300. I'll see you then.
Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Coach, what'd you think? Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were gonna get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks, but you knew what you were getting into. It will result in less listens. You're gonna see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're going to see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you, don't use this fucking riff. It sucks.